you did mention before about research, right? So like, I know sometimes your strategy is only as good as the inputs that are coming in. So the research that you've done, sometimes you'll just find this like golden nugget of information. You're like, oh, that's the thing that I'll use to take the company in this direction, and that's the sort of the golden insight. Like, is it true that good strategy is only as good as the research and the insights that are coming in?
There are a lot of campaigns. If we are not talking about the brand building, but if we are talking about the campaigns, there are a lot of good and great campaigns that doesn't have a strategy behind them. I had a conversation with a very smart strategist from Sweden, and we talked about Klarna's famous campaign, which is called Smooth. And Klarna is in buy now, pay later segment. If someone doesn't know the brand, Smooth is the amazing campaign where they show the consumer experience through just showing the feeling, how it feels like, to use their services. And I asked about the strategy, and the strategist who worked in the agency where they created the campaign, he said like there wasn't a strategy. They just used the approach from Saatchi and Saatchi, which was called the brutal simplicity, and the creative team basically came with this idea. There's no strategy, it's just a simple idea behind it. When I did my research interviews with strategists across the globe during the COVID time, I also asked like a very naive question about the insights, like, how do you define, or do we need insight for every campaign? And a couple of very experienced strategists told me like, you don't need to have an insight to build a campaign. And then they told me like, check Cadbury's Gorilla campaign. There's no insight. It's an amazing campaign.
It's random, isn't it?
Yeah, and it doesn't have an insight. And they were like, you can, yeah, they said like you can come up with one, if you want, but actually they didn't have any insight. And the same goes for Klarna. It's also Smooth, it's an amazing campaign, and there's no even a strategy behind it. When I talked with the strategist in the United States and I said, and we talked about the insights, they were like, oh, you need to find an insight. There's always need to be a really good insight on which you can only build a good campaign or excellent campaign. And I said, that's not true, because so many strategists who are like, in the business for 20, 25 years, they have told me with examples that there are so many amazing campaigns that doesn't have an insight. And their mind kind of broke down because they were like, how? Really? It's not possible. And I was like, it is possible. Yeah, it's true. But that's why it's very important to remember that there are these campaigns that doesn't have the insight. Just to remind also to a younger generation who are now coming in and they are following these strategy influencers on the LinkedIn who are talking very actively like, hey, you need an insight and this is the 5 ways how to get to the insight, or these are the best insights, or there are some structures, sentence structures that you can use to kind of to write your insight and all that stuff. And they're making a lot of money on these people who just doesn't understand that you can build a campaign without the insight, and you just need to, not know that fact too.